This looks like a normal medical scene, but it isn't. It's atomic energy at work, as a blessing. And this looks like what it is, devastation due to an atomic blast. Must atomic energy lead only to destruction like this? Or can it be used as it is here, a blessing to mankind? Here is Fred McMurray with an answer to that question.
Hello, everybody. I'm Fred McMurray. You have just seen some pictures showing the devastating destruction of atomic energy, and also some pictures showing that atomic energy can be a force for good. And these are just a few of the wonderful and until recently secret motion picture scenes which we are going to show you. Now, I think I'm an average American citizen, like most of you, and when I hear the word atom, I immediately think of the word bomb, which shows you how very little I know about atomic energy. But I've been asked to come here by Father Keller, the founder of the Christopher movement, and to help him in presenting this film. And so here I am. And now, Father James Keller.
Thank you very much, Fred, for being with us.
Father, tell me, how did you ever happen to get interested in atomic energy?
Well, there's a great story behind that. It's an instance of what one person can do. One day, a man in the atomic energy field dropped in here at our office and said that he'd heard we were going to make 30 pictures, 30 Christopher pictures, to get people of quality into the fields that count. He urged us to make one on atomic energy. And I looked at him. I wondered how we could ever do that. And he didn't pay any attention to my protesting. And he said, well, if you do, if you can show that this power is from God and it can be used for research and medicine and agriculture, industry, and countless other ways, it may have a great effect in benefiting mankind for the future. And he said, if you don't, or some movement like yours doesn't, most of us may be blasted off the face of the earth.
Well, he couldn't have put it any stronger, could he?
It frightened me at first, but then I got over the shock quickly, and then I saw it in a tremendous challenge. Gee, even if you could have the smallest, most insignificant part in changing this power from destructive to a constructive force and use it as God intended as a benefit for mankind, that'd be a thrill. So we started right away to get into it, and I've been fiddling around ever since, trying to get scripts, everything else, and I think we've just about hit it. So we plan not only to do one film, we'd like to do about 2 or 3 films on atomic energy. Well, I think now we ought to get into the picture, bring it to the friends, Fred.
This is Hal Gibney. I will act as your guide as we look at these atomic energy pictures which Fred McMurray and Father Keller just spoke to you about. You are now looking at scientists at work at a most vital function in atomic energy, the production of what is known as radioactive materials. It looks big and confusing and kind of complicated, doesn't it? Well, for the average person not steeped in scientific knowledge, it is complicated. But we don't intend in these pictures to try to explain the miracle of atomic energy. We hope to show only how this God-given force can be used as a blessing. For example, let us look in on a famous cancer research hospital and get a close look at atomic energy working as a benefit for mankind. This girl is suffering from one of mankind's most dreaded diseases, cancer. She has cancer of the thyroid gland.
A few years ago, this would have meant her case was hopeless unless radical surgery was used.
This glass looks like it has plain water in it, but actually it contains hope. Hope in the form of a radioactive iodine solution. Most people know that iodine is used in treating thyroid, but let's explain where this radioactive business comes in. By splitting the atoms of iodine, you get the radioactive iodine solution the girl is drinking. Here we see the young lady on the examination table. Suppose instead of the radioactive solution she had swallowed, a tiny wristwatch. If you could listen closely enough, you could hear it ticking in her throat. The little bit of atomic energy in that solution starts sending out signals from her throat in somewhat the same way as the ticking of the watch. The apparatus suspended above her neck is picking up the so-called ticking. So the radioactive solution produced by atomic study is helping the doctor in his efforts to help the girl.
You can imagine how thrilled she is to know that there is one more ray of hope for her.
Let us look at the many places in America where, for many years, thousands have worked in the field of atomic energy. Here's the main headquarters of the Atomic Energy Commission in Washington, D.C. Branching out from this central headquarters is a vast network of projects. This is the Brookhaven National Laboratory in Upton, New York, where one of our greatest atomic furnaces is located. At the Hanford Works in the state of Washington, a tremendous program in health physics is underway. And this is the Plant Industry Station at Beltsville, Maryland. They're using atomic energy to learn more about growth and nutrition of plants. In Schenectady, New York, at the Knowles Atomic Power Laboratory, scientists are studying how atomic energy can be used for power. Here is Oak Ridge Laboratory, where the radioactive iodine came from that brought the smile of hope to our girl in the first scenes. At the University of California in Los Angeles, there is an important project. In the deserts of New Mexico at Los Alamos, there is another. And at New Brunswick, New Jersey, still another. In Idaho, there is an important atomic energy testing station. Finally, there is the Argonne National Laboratory in Chicago. While we are here, let us go inside and see a remarkable example of the ingenuity which man has utilized in dealing with the potentially dangerous forces of atomic energy. Here is a testing room where various metals and materials are subjected to intense radiation. This room is shielded by concrete walls 3 feet thick. Just think of it. A force you can't see or feel, and yet it is so powerful it has to be shielded by 3-foot walls. In order to handle the materials in this dangerous place, the Argonne workers have invented a fantastically wonderful pair of artificial hands operated by remote control. These robot hands are designed to imitate the 7 human motions employed in grasping, lifting, moving, and turning objects. Here is a man who has practically 4 hands. Isn't that something? You'll note that he has his fingers inserted into metal finger tubes. Every motion that he makes with his fingers and hands is exactly duplicated through remote control by the mechanical hands inside the testing room. He's watching his other pair of hands through a window built of laminated layers of glass to a thickness of 3 feet. You are now looking through this 3-foot thick window at the mechanical hands. And here is what he is pulling out. In each of these containers is a small portion of some element that has just been made radioactive. These are the tracers used in various experiments, both in science and in industry. All over the United States, in laboratories, in greenhouses, in the open fields, thousands of workers are learning more about how plants grow, how they use the materials in the soil. From what they find out in experiments such as you see here, they'll be able to put fertilizers to better use and so get better crops. Certainly here is a blessing to mankind. In this field of corn, they are studying the effect of radiation. They are learning more and more about corn. Here is a scientist who, for all intents and purposes, is a farmer. He is taking the pollen from one ear of corn and pouring it into another ear of the same plant. This is a plant that has received radiations of atomic energy. This experiment will help to show the effect of radiation on future generations of corn. All these experiments are constructive uses of this dangerous force. Of course, all the efforts in agriculture are not confined to working with plants alone. For example, here in this laboratory, under the blazing rays of an artificial sun, they are trying to solve the greatest mystery connected with plants. How does the green coloring matter of a plant enable it to use carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight to produce oxygen and plant tissue? How does it use the energy of sunlight as a part of its process of growth and produce the food we eat? Suppose they find out? They may be able to grow bigger and better food plants. They may even be able to create food elements in the laboratory without the plants. More food for a starving world. A blessing indeed.
Friends, that's just part of the film that you're going to see on this wonderful subject of atomic energy, the hopeful side of atomic energy. But I think you've noticed, as it impressed me, and I think it's probably impressed you the same way, that people did this. A handful of people have discovered, uncovered for all of us, the positive, constructive side of atomic energy. As I was telling Mr. McMurray a little while ago, that in each instance, it's emphasis on what one person can do. Didn't that impress you too, Fred?
It certainly did, Father. Oh, say, Father, in your book, there was a good example of what one person can do. I mean the story about the school teacher up in Deming, Washington. Dorothy Massey was her name, wasn't it?
That was right.
Why don't you tell the audience about that?
I'll be delighted. This story that Fred mentions is a splendid example of what one person can do far removed from the atomic energy field. This teacher, Dorothy Massey, she's 58 years old. She teaches science in the Consolidated High School. And she's not simply taking care of herself for a little area. She wants to make the world better for being in it. Besides tackling atomic energy, she does many other things. She works from morning till night. During this summer, she's doing all sorts of things. Over the weekend, she's teaching at the Baptist Sunday School. And she just can't do enough to help others. Well, in her class in science, she tried to get over to the teenagers that they, too, could play a part in making atomic energy God-given help to mankind. She emphasized what they could do, what can be done through research in medicine, agriculture, industry, and all these various fields. And she thought that maybe Sam would pick up this idea and go into this important sphere of influence. Well, what happened? Several of her graduates have gone into the field of atomic energy. And one of them won a prize, a national prize for science for all America, a teenager. And they told me when I was at the Atomic Energy Commission in Washington that this young lad may be one of the great scientists of America in the future. Why? Because not only does he have a disposition towards science, but above that, he has a spiritual sense that's going to restrain it and use it for the advantage of mankind. Dorothy Massey has given a heartening example to all of us. It's one more instance of what one person can do.
Wouldn't it be a great thing, Father, if there were just one Dorothy Massey in each town and city in the country?
Why, the whole future peacetime development of atomic energy would be assured.
That's right. And I think it'll be pointed out to you folks in the rest of the films that you're about to see.
Now, let us look at some more of the atomic energy films. Here, we are at the famous Oak Ridge Atomic Energy Project. What are the technicians doing here? Well, it's a long, complicated, and highly technical story. I do want to point out, however, that one of these technicians could well be that student described by Father Keller in his story about the wonderful school teacher from the state of Washington. As for what is going on in this scene, well, they're cooking up more of those atomic substances which are called radioactive materials. The radioactive substance you see being made right now may be the same substance which is being utilized in this next medical scene. It doesn't seem very interesting, but believe it or not, you are seeing a bunch of atoms drawing their own picture. Every tick of a radioactive atom causes the pin in the instrument to jiggle as it passes over the chart. This is an important function. Let's see it in action. This gentleman may have cancer of the thyroid gland. He's drinking the same kind of iodine solution that the young lady drank. And just as it did in her case, the iodine goes to the thyroid gland and concentrates in the cancer tissue. But this time, they put this instrument to work. This is atomic energy as God intended it to be used. The instrument is rigged up so that as the machine moves back and forth above his thyroid gland, the pen moves across the chart. The signals sent out by the radioactive iodine are run through another instrument and made strong enough to wiggle the pen. And there you are, a picture of the patient's thyroid gland showing exactly where the iodine is concentrated. The change in pattern tells the doctor whether or not the patient has cancer and where it is. Then treatment can start. Some of the treatment may not be by atomic energy, but atomic energy is a means of diagnosis, of finding out the truth, and perhaps at the same time, stopping the spread of cancer. Now, let us look at another field where atomic energy is at work as a blessing: farm animals. You are watching an atomic energy experiment in nutrition. For example, the hen you see here is being fed a special breakfast. I would say about $11 of radioactive carbon and phosphorus. What's it all about? Well, the radioactive atoms in the carbon and phosphorus can be easily traced. And in that way, we see how a hen makes use of them in building an egg. From the findings of the scientists, better egg production in the future can be assured. Here we see atomic scientists who might even be called cowboys. They have just given the husky steer in the picture an injection of radioactive iodine. This is research to give us better and healthier beef animals. Here's another experiment with farm animals, with sheep. The sheep are eating cubes of food containing radioactive elements of various kinds. It doesn't harm the sheep, but it gives us a means of finding out how to build better lamb chops and mutton for the future. Now let us look at another scene of atomic energy at work as a possible lifesaver. This time we are going to look at a radioactive substance called gallium. Even though the gallium substance you see being handled is going to be put into a patient's body, the laboratory worker must be extremely careful in his handling of it. After all, he handles the stuff day in and day out, and he must be careful not to come into too close contact with it. That is why it is shielded by thick bricks, and why he handles it at the end of a piece of twine. When this man was brought to the Cancer Research Hospital, his case was extremely serious. He had a cancer of the chest. It was spreading in spite of all ordinary treatment. His condition finally came to the attention of one of the 22 Southern medical schools that cooperate with the Atomic Energy Commission's Oak Ridge Institute of Nuclear Studies in operating this hospital.
He readily agreed to being given an experimental shot of radioactive gallium. The doctors want to know if the powerful rays from this element being dripped into the man's blood will help this type of cancer.
There it goes. Drip, drip, drip. Every drop is a soldier in a new kind of army. An army that is fighting with God against the forces of disease. This man needs all the help he can get from those little particles of radioactive gallium. Week after week, this battle went on. Now let us see the result. You might think the patient is worse because he's on the operating table. Actually, this is another step in his fight against cancer, the fight in which he now has an ally in atomic energy. Thanks to the signals the gallium sends out, the doctors have been able to pinpoint the cancer. This man has leukemia. His body is not manufacturing enough red blood cells. Up until lately, this disease has been almost always fatal. But now, thanks to atomic energy, it can be detected a lot earlier.
The earlier they start treating it, the more hope of a cure. Experiments such as these may eventually give more hope for a reprieve from a death sentence, thanks to atomic energy.
In these films, we have concentrated to a large extent on atomic energy as a blessing in the field of medicine. But let us emphasize again that atomic energy is already serving mankind in many ways. For example, already atomic energy is being used to measure engine wear under different lubrication conditions, and thus to develop new engine oils, to study how corrosion occurs, for example, in telephone poles, and thus to develop ways of preventing it. To study the process by which gasoline may be produced synthetically from coal and oil, and thus to find ways of improving it. To propel ships at sea with plants powered by atomic energy. To study tire wear and thus to develop better tires. And to study nutritional deficiencies in humans and animals and find ways to correct them. Yes, this is atomic energy at work, not as a force for evil, but as a force for good, at work as God intended it to be. And in this field, so many, many more people of goodwill and high character are needed to supplement the present great army of workers. Men and women of all professions and trades are needed. To name a few, plant guards and security police, radiologists, both men and women, statisticians to handle scientific data, both men and women with executive ability, file clerks like this young lady, plant engineers, construction workers for new projects, nuclear scientists of many fields, biochemists are needed too, and meteorologists to get atmospheric data. Yes, as you have seen by these pictures, atomic energy can be a blessing.
Friends, the film you've just seen shows very clearly the tremendous power for good that atomic energy can bring to humanity. If it's used in a constructive way, God has put this enormous power in our hands, meant it to be used as our servant, not as our master. Just think of all the things that could be done if we would only use atomic energy as a blessing of God for research into medicine, for uses in agriculture, for countless ways of developing industry, light, heat, things that are almost beyond our imagination. But that remains for you to decide, for you to make up your mind, you to use your influence to see that this extraordinary power is used for the benefit of mankind, not for his destruction. You see now, coming up over the world, various uses of reactors. Just think of what this will mean not only for our country, but for nations that are completely undeveloped at present. Let it be used in the ways of God rather than the ways of the devil. And now, just to remind you what it can be, we're going to bring to you a section of film from another movie made by the Christophers on the power of atomic energy. And in this film, you will see its destructive force. Let it be a reminder to you. And now we shall see this segment of film.
She asleep?
Yes, fast asleep.
How do you feel about it now that we're on our way?
I know you're right, Dad.
Certain?
I am now. I suppose I was just keeping her in San Francisco, hoping against hope that one day the doctors would come up with some miraculous cure. But, oh, she'll love your ranch. She'll be happy there. I've got to face it, Dad. That's all we can do for her now.
You'll have to wait here a while. You better park right over there. Those are your instructions.
What's going on?
You got yourself a front seat to something you're not going to forget so quick. See that hill? You'll see it light up like you never saw light before. Any minute now, they're going to test an atomic bomb.
Dad, let's turn back.
Wouldn't get very far. Ought to go off any minute now.
But what about Vivian? She'll be terrified.
It'll be just like fireworks for her. She doesn't know what it means. We'll be the ones who'll be frightened.
Now, for our Christopher Thought for the week, I think this text is particularly appropriate. It's from St. Paul to the Hebrews. Here are his words. For we have not here a lasting city, but we seek one that is to come. Well, that's rather appropriate now in an atomic age. We have not here a lasting city. But even before atomic energy, but before atomic bombs and hydrogen bombs came along, we're only here for a while, but at least God wanted us to have a little foretaste of heaven on earth. He meant us to have peace. He meant us to use all the powers of the earth for our benefit, not for our destruction. Try to make atomic energy a force for good. Now in the Christophers, as we mentioned many times before, we have no organization, no memberships, no meetings, no dues. We pass along little suggestions, indications of what others have done in our monthly news notes, that we send to 1 million people at the present time. And we will be glad to send them to you. All you need do is send a postcard to the Christophers, New York, 17 New York. We will be glad to send them to you without any cost whatever. Keep in mind, as we try to emphasize over and over again, the part that you can play in changing this world. This is your world. And God wants you to reach out to the world, reach out to everybody. All of humanity is nothing more than you over and over again. Show that this 20th century in which we're privileged to live can do something that's going to help man. We've achieved many things in a physical, mechanical way, but let us not forget that it has remained for our day to bring to humanity universal death and destruction if we mishandle atomic and hydrogen energy. Do your part to show that this can be a servant of man, used for his benefit. And then, once you are reaching out to the fields, you must do more than simply take an attitude of wishful thinking. You must do something. Take an interest in your government. Take an interest in your schools, in your radio, in your television, all your means of communication. Better literature, better everything that's going to fill them with good ideas instead of reducing them to the status of a brute. There'll be less and less of brutality the more we bring into our hearts the peace and love that God wants us to have. Don't forget the part that you can play. No matter who you are or what you are, no matter what your circumstances may be, there is a part that you personally can play in changing the whole world for the better. Do your part, and you will be happy because you've done your part. For all. Thank you, and God bless you.
Let us face, without panic, the reality of our times, the fact that atom bombs may someday be dropped on our cities, and let us prepare for survival by understanding the weapon that threatens us. An atom bomb destroys or injures in three ways: by blast, heat, and radioactivity. The blast of an atom bomb is its most important destructive agent. In Japan, whole buildings were flattened by its force. However, many buildings of sturdy construction, even though close to the explosion, remained standing. The principal dangers of blast are flying glass and debris, the fires it may start, and the danger of being crushed in collapsing buildings. The atom bomb destroys by heat. People caught in the open as far as 2 miles away suffered flash burns. Yet, protection could have been easily achieved. Here, a bridge post and rail shielded the surface behind it. Any solid material afforded similar protection. The third weapon of the bomb is radioactivity, thrown off at the instant of explosion. However, the majority of people exposed to radiation recovered completely, including a large percentage of those who suffered serious radiation sickness. Today, they lead normal lives. They bear children. Their children are normal. These, then, are the weapons of the atom bomb that we must protect against: blast, heat, and radioactivity. Our cities are prime targets for atomic attack, but mass evacuation would be disastrous. An enemy would like nothing better than to have us leave our cities empty and unproductive. If an emergency should come, our factories will be battle stations. Production must go on if we are to win. Our offices and homes will also be posts of duty, not to be deserted. With the knowledge of the first atomic explosions to guide us, our chances for survival will be far better than those of the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, if we act on our knowledge and are prepared. The first job is to look over your own home for shelter possibilities. If you live in a private home that is well built, the cellar is the safest place to be. The lower you get, the more barriers there are likely to be against blast, heat, and radioactivity. Select the basement wall nearest the probable target area of your city. If the house is blown over, it will most likely fall away from this wall. If you have a workbench or strong table big enough to get under, move it into your shelter area near a wall or strong supporting column. If the time comes when you actually have to take shelter, lie under the table. If you live in a home that has no basement, choose a shelter area without windows on the ground floor. An interior hallway is probably best. In time of emergency, the shelter area should be cleared of mirrors and other objects that might cause injury. If you live in an apartment house, rules for taking shelter will be posted in your building. Learn them. Also, learn the location of public shelters in areas where you work or frequently visit. There are many things you can begin doing right now. Fireproof housekeeping is one, so clean up that attic. Keep waste in covered containers. Don't let trash pile up in the yard. Set aside a small supply of canned goods. They're safe from radioactivity. Have a good flashlight on hand. Electric lights may go out. Keep a first aid kit and learn how to stop bleeding. Make a habit of keeping a bottle of fresh water handy. A radio will be important for receiving vital instructions. Finally, prepare the shelter area and collect all necessary shelter equipment. In case of an actual raid or test drill, the alert will be a warbling siren blast lasting 3 minutes. Once you hear this, act fast. Pull down the shades or blinds and close the drapes against flying glass. Turn off the burners of your gas or electric stove. Disconnect any heating elements, such as electric irons, hot plates, or bathroom heaters. Close all outside doors, but leave them unlocked. Turn off the gas or oil burners. Taking shelter may be a race against time, even when you have some advance warning. But possibly, there may be no time. An attack could come without warning. The sky would suddenly light up. If a doorway is right at hand, use it. If the nearest shelter is more than a couple of steps away, fall to the ground immediately. Flying glass and debris are immediate dangers, so stay where you are until you're sure it's safe to move. If you are at home when a surprise attack occurs, crawl beneath a table if it is very near, or drop to the floor with your back to the window. The immediate danger is over in about a minute, unless the explosion occurred near the ground or water. In this case, radioactive materials are trapped in the particles of dirt or water thrown up by the explosion. When these particles fall back to Earth, they may be dangerous. So get indoors immediately after a ground-level explosion. Cover broken windows against radioactive dust with blankets or cardboard. Civil defense radiological teams, equipped with radiation survey meters, will check on contamination in any bombed area. Stay under cover until you hear officially that it is safe outside. If you have been exposed to radioactive dust, wash the exposed areas. Pay particular attention to your hair. Get all the dirt from under your fingernails. If the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki had known what we know about civil defense, thousands of lives would have been saved. Yes, the knowledge is ours, and preparation can mean survival for you. So act now. Someday your life may depend on it.
You and I are living in the atomic age. The peaceful atom, no longer just a laboratory dream, is here today, working wonders, providing a happier, more abundant world for all mankind. Already, atomic development is a major factor in the American economy. Thousands of men and women earn their livelihood by harnessing nuclear energy for our benefit. The Chamber of Commerce of the United States is going to introduce you to just a few of these atomic wonders. Miracles that are happening all about you, wherever you are, because the atom has come to town.
Yes, the atom is on its way to brighten our towns and to help manufacture our most dependable and indispensable household servant, electric power. Electricity that illuminates our lives, frees us from drudgery, and brings us in contact with all the world through radio, telephone, and television can now be produced from the energy within the atom. And to some of us, at least, this is surprising news.
You know, I don't know what I'd do without my new all-electric kitchen. Really, it saves me hours of work every day. But do you suppose that our appliances would run as well on atomic energy?
Hey, Sam. You know that someday this machine of yours is going to be operating on atomic power?
Yeah? Well, they can run it on kerosene if they want to, just as long as I'm still at the switch. From what I hear, it'll be quite a while before these atomic power plants even get built.
I declare, with all these atomic plants going up everywhere, I wonder if a girl's even safe in her own home. I just hope they know what they're doing. Who's lead?
I see by the morning paper we're getting an atom power plant here. I remember when this town got its first electric generating station. I was only a boy. Tom Edison himself came down for the ceremony's checkmate.
The old gent's right about one thing. This town has sure grown up since he was a kid. I don't understand. Why do we need an atomic power plant? Unless maybe it's to make free electricity. Yeah, I suppose that's the reason.
Well, no, that's not exactly the reason. But never mind. A lot of other folks are just as confused about the real purpose of atomic energy. And it all begins with a particle of matter so small that it can't be seen under even the strongest microscope. The end of that billiard cue, for instance, could comfortably accommodate more than 1,000 billion atoms. But infinitesimal as it is, scientists know pretty well just how the atom is constructed. Let's imagine these pool balls are the nucleus of an atom. There would be protons like the red balls, and neutrons like the yellow ones, all bound together by powerful forces. If our atom is split or fissioned, some of the energy is released. A few of the neutrons go flying off and can be made to split other atoms, which release their energy in a chain reaction. Tremendous heat is generated, and it is this heat that can be harnessed for our use. Every element in the world is made of atoms, but only the atoms of a very few elements can be split in this way. The most important are uranium atoms. Potential energy in just 1 tablespoon of uranium equals the muscle power of 40 million strong men working for an hour, or the heat from more than 750 tons of coal. In fact, 1 tablespoon of uranium is potentially capable of making enough electricity to meet all the needs of an average-sized city for a full day, or your own home for about 500 years. But this is potential atomic energy. In actual practice, only a small amount of the uranium fuel can be burned or fissioned. The trick is to make electric power economically from this usable portion of the fuel. Atomic engineers begin with the simple energy conversion principle by which most of our country's electricity is already being produced. Fire can be used to make steam, and steam can be used to turn a pinwheel. If the spinning pinwheel is attached to a magnet, the invisible lines of magnetic force can be made to cut across the turns of wire in a coil, generating electricity. In today's modern electric power plants, this is exactly what happens. Coal, oil, or gas is burned in huge boilers which produce steam at tremendously high temperatures and pressures. The steam spins a large turbine, which drives a giant generator to create the electricity we use. In an atomic power plant, a reactor is substituted for the boiler. The reactor is a special chamber in which atoms of uranium fuel are split, releasing their pent-up energy in the form of heat. Of course, safety devices are added, including dense radiation shielding and special enclosures such as a steel sphere. Otherwise, an atomic power plant is just about the same as any other power plant. It will produce the same kind of electricity and run the same kind of appliances and machines as we are using now. Over the years, our consumption of electricity has increased enormously. 10 years ago, the average use in an American family was about 1,500 kilowatt hours of power a year. Now, with so many more household chores being done electrically, about 3,000 kilowatt hours are needed. And 10 years from now, the average American family may be using twice this amount. The same thing has been happening in our factories. In 10 years, twice as much electricity will be needed to maintain our increasing rate of productivity. Already, the United States, with but 6% of the world's population, uses over 40% of the world's electric power. It's one reason why we enjoy the highest living standard of any nation in the world. In the years ahead, our electric power consumption will continue to increase. More for our homes and more for our factories will bring the nation's total demand to at least 4 times the present level by 1975. Right now, most electric power is made by burning coal, oil, or gas. But although supplies of these fuels are adequate to meet demands for years to come, they are not inexhaustible. Besides, these conventional fuels are needed for many other important purposes in addition to the generation of electricity. As our power requirements increase, a new energy resource, atomic energy, will be needed to supplement our present fuel reserves. Fortunately, known uranium deposits exceed by at least 20 times the combined power-producing potential of all the world's coal, oil, and gas resources. Thus, the real purpose of atomic power development is to assure a continuing abundance of electricity. And already progress is being made. This atomic power plant, built for the Army, is generating small amounts of electricity at an important base in Virginia. Originally developed for use by the armed forces in overseas locations, this type of station may eventually prove useful in remote areas of this country. Near Los Angeles is another of America's early reactor projects, built as part of the government's nuclear power development program. A California electric utility has installed a power plant to provide electricity from the reactor heat on an experimental basis. Near Pleasanton, California, is the nation's first nuclear power plant built entirely with free enterprise funds. As with every atomic plant, special attention has been given to safety. Automatic control equipment would shut down the plant instantaneously if, for any reason, fission began to take place too rapidly. A thick steel and concrete vessel would contain radiation even in the most serious kind of accident imaginable. Atomic power plants will be good neighbors wherever they are built. This is Shippingport, Pennsylvania, site of America's first full-scale atomic power station. When completed, it will be the largest known atomic plant in the world, devoted exclusively to peaceful purposes. But it won't make free electricity. No atomic plant ever will. Shippingport's complex nuclear apparatus and tons of concrete and steel add up to a multi-million-dollar investment, jointly shared by government and business. On the quiet banks of the Ohio River, genuine evidence of our nation's atomic progress. But for the present, at least, this progress must be measured more by the nuclear knowledge we gain than by the actual power we generate. Electric utility executives must choose from hundreds of different designs, all of which are theoretically possible. The most promising must first be tried out in small-scale reactor experiments, then incorporated in actual power plants before their commercial value can be established. It's expensive research, but important plans are underway. This is a model of a 275,000 kilowatt station which will go into operation outside of New York City sometime in 1960. This plant, now under construction near Detroit, will have a different type of reactor, capable of actually manufacturing more atomic fuel than it burns. By 1960, power from this atomic station will be furnished to 500,000 homes in the Chicago area. And in the hills of New England, work is already underway on this modern nuclear project. During the next 10 years, atomic plants will be springing up throughout the nation as America's electrical industry, working in the free enterprise tradition, invests hundreds of millions of dollars in nuclear development. And by 1975, the atom may provide a substantial portion of our total generating capacity. The world will have a brand new energy resource, one that will be vitally needed to assure an abundance of economical electricity for light, for power, and for our continuing high standard of living. But atomic energy can also be shipped in a can in the form of radioisotopes, mysterious products of the atomic age that start out as ordinary elements but become radioactive through exposure to atomic fission. Their radiations are invisible, yet so powerful that just one drop of radioactive water can be detected in a full tank car of ordinary water. At the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, where most radioisotopes are produced, an atomic drugstore is maintained. Here, mechanical hands fill prescriptions for a variety of customers in every corner of the nation. One radioisotope user may be the hospital in your own town. More than 900 medical centers and clinics employ the atom in the fight against disease. Doctors have discovered that radioisotopes can be extremely useful, particularly in the diagnosis of specific ailments. One well-known technique is the atomic cocktail, prepared by mixing a few drops of radioactive iodine with ordinary drinking water. This simple drink, which serves as a tracer, is used by physicians who work with patients suspected of having thyroid trouble. And incidentally, one of its best features is its complete tastelessness. If, as suspected, the patient's thyroid is overactive, the iodine will concentrate in the gland in excessive amounts. Within 48 hours, the radioactive iodine can be traced with atomic detecting equipment. Sensitive instruments measure the thyroid's performance, giving the doctor an accurate picture of the gland's condition and helping him decide on the kind of treatment the patient should have. Several other ailments, including some diseases of the liver and blood, can be diagnosed in much the same way. In larger doses, radioisotopes are also used therapeutically to control diseases such as polycythemia and bring relief for certain types of leukemia. Here at New York's Memorial Center, a cobalt machine is used for deep radiation of cancer. This rotational therapy is similar to X-ray treatment, but the new equipment using a radioisotope source is more flexible in its ability to reach the malignancy. At the New England Deaconess Hospital in Boston, a cancer operation is in progress. As the diseased tissue is removed, a specimen is kept for basic research on the behavior of cancer cells under atomic radiation. In the research institute adjacent to the hospital, the specimen tissues are quickly processed, and then they are incubated in a special fluid medium which supplies nutrition and allows them to continue growing. Finally, the cells are ready for study under a powerful microscope, and their behavior is accurately recorded by a motion picture camera. These are living cancer cells, functioning just as though they were still within the patient. They are splitting apart in the process of mitosis, the way in which all cells multiply, and the way by which the disease spreads in the body. Medical science is searching for a reliable means of destroying the cells completely through radiation. A small amount of radioactive material is placed over the laboratory culture. The cells are exposed for a short time to atomic bombardment. Here is a cancer cell actually dying after radiation. Its furious struggle to split is of no avail, and its malignant growth is halted. If it were still within the patient's body, it could no longer threaten his life. Many hours of painstaking research lie ahead before these laboratory successes can be translated into actual clinical practice. But each day, medical science moves closer to the complete conquest of this dreaded disease. And already, through the healing power of the atom, we can all look forward to happier, healthier lives for ourselves and our families. The atom has come to the farm, too. With radioisotopes, agricultural specialists are learning important new facts about plants and livestock. These youngsters may not realize it, but they're growing up in a unique laboratory at the University of Maryland, where their mothers are cooperating in some highly unusual research. The ordinary dairy cow is a remarkable factory. She's one of nature's few animals capable of converting grass into milk. Yet how she does it, and why some cows give more milk than others, has largely remained a mystery. Now, some of the answers are being discovered with radioisotopes. Various chemicals, similar to those the cow might get in her regular food, are harmlessly injected into her bloodstream. The chemicals have first been tagged with the radioisotope, but since the cow doesn't know this, she processes them just like any other diet. And later, she returns them to the professors in the conventional manner. In the laboratory, the sample is broken down into its major components to see how much of the radioactive injection was actually converted into first-quality milk. A Geiger counter provides the data with an accuracy never before obtained. New clues to cattle nutrition, which will mean more milk and better milk on our breakfast tables. Even the dependable cow is getting help from the atom. Here's an event that takes place every autumn in the Southland, the peanut harvest. At this experimental farm operated by North Carolina State University, the peanuts, being so carefully classified and tagged, were grown from seeds radiated in atomic reactors. Radiation upsets normal hereditary characteristics, creating new plant families with widely varying qualities. Plant biologists select only a few for development into permanent strains. Experimental cultivation of these new varieties has been encouraging. There is a good chance of boosting acreage yield by 10 to 15%, and the atomic peanut's stronger resistance to blight may eventually save millions of dollars every year. These are giants created by radiation. We can imagine their future impact on the peanut buying public. But equally significant are the many manufactured products, including the family car, which are now being developed with atomic energy. Radioisotopes are among the more important research tools in Detroit. In factory laboratories, automotive men assemble special engines with operating parts which have been made radioactive. As these unique power plants run on the test stands, any metal which wears away is collected in the lubricating oil, and the oil is circulated through an atomic scintillation counter. Being radioactive, the most minute metal particles can be detected, providing an accurate indication of the rate of engine wear. This is vital information for the men who are now designing the better cars of the future. The tires on your car also wear longer, thanks to the atom. For nowadays, radioisotopes help check quality. Much of the strength in an automobile tire comes from its nylon cord, to which just the right amount of rubber coating must be added for maximum safety. After the coating has been applied, the fabric passes under an atomic thickness gauge. This device can tell immediately whether the proper amount of rubber is being added. If there's a fraction too much or too little, the gauge sends back a signal and the machine is readjusted. This is automation, a giant rubber mill controlled by invisible atomic rays. And it means a safer set of tires on your own family car. Even your toothpaste may be a product of the atomic age. These teeth, which have first been made radioactive at Oak Ridge, are being scrubbed with a new toothpaste containing stannous fluoride, a chemical which makes them harder to dissolve. After their laboratory brushing, the teeth are dunked in acids similar to those which are formed in the mouth and cause tooth decay. The acid solution, if it does succeed in dissolving any of the tooth enamel, must also pick up its radioactivity, which can be accurately measured in a Geiger counter. The count is low, indicating the new toothpaste with stannous fluoride will do its job of preventing cavities. Home from a trip? You may have been carrying an atomic suitcase. At least its tough plastic skin, which absorbs the abuse of baggage rooms and luggage racks, may have been made in machinery controlled by radioisotopes. An atom ray thickness gauge sends a specified amount of radiation through the plastic as it travels between the rollers, making sure that thickness stays within prescribed limits. Already, more than 1,200 American businesses are using the atom to help manufacture their products, from raincoats to razor blades. Yet, it's really just a beginning. In the next few years, atomic radiation may lead to major changes in several of our most important industries, particularly the petroleum industry. Nowadays, only 1 in 9 exploratory wells pays off, as oil becomes harder and harder to find. The Earth still holds plenty of oil hidden within certain types of rock strata. But no one can tell ahead of time just where these formations are located. Drilling operations must be halted while samples of rock at different depths are cored out and brought up for inspection. Thousands of feet of pipe are yanked from the well and lassoed to the top of the derrick. It's back-breaking, time-consuming, expensive work. At last, from a depth of almost a mile, the cored-out rock reaches the surface and is quickly rushed to a laboratory for detailed chemical analysis. For years, oil companies have been searching for a better means of identifying mineral formations below the earth. Now, atomic energy may offer the answer. In the research laboratory, various types of rock are collected and prepared for testing. Since every mineral reacts differently to radiation, scientists can now identify specific rock strata by their radiation responses. A particle accelerator, or atom smasher, is used to bombard the rock specimens. The test is ready. The room is evacuated. The accelerator is energized. As radiation intensity builds up, the reaction of the sample is recorded, providing definite identification of many of the mineral elements in the rock. Now, just one additional technique remains to be perfected. Engineers are experimenting with a portable downhole radiation source. With this miniature atom smasher, oilmen may be able to obtain instrument readings at the site, and by comparing them with laboratory data already gathered, correctly identify the rock formations below. Radiation will be the eyes of the geologist, allowing him to see literally thousands of feet below the surface of the earth to where our hidden resources lie buried. But there is yet another way by which atomic energy may revolutionize this same industry. Eventually, radiation may be employed to produce completely new kinds of fuels and lubricants. These engineers are preparing an experimental device in which crude oil can be maintained under conditions similar to those in a full-scale refinery. In a few minutes, this test apparatus will be exposed to radiation from an atomic reactor built expressly for this type of research. The reactor is constructed like a swimming pool, half of which can be drained while the operators prepare the experiment. After the test device has been firmly anchored to a movable rack, it too is covered with water. The experiment is moved into position next to the reactor's uranium core. When the chain reaction starts, atomic bombardment will literally tear apart the petroleum molecules. But this change in molecular structure may lead to better fuels in your automobile. Everything is in readiness for the test. Control equipment is switched on and the reactor comes to life. We will be watching atomic fission. As the speed of the chain reaction increases, the core begins to glow. It grows brighter and brighter as its penetrating stream of neutrons strike home. Though no one can foretell the exact results of this particular experiment, one fact is clear. It is through research such as we see here that our greatest hopes for the atom will be realized. And in a free country with a free enterprise economy, there are no bounds to what man's creative ingenuity can accomplish. Already, atomic energy can bring us electric power, cure disease and relieve suffering, help raise our food, produce our material goods, make our homes more comfortable and our communities more prosperous. Yes, the atom has come to town.
Teeing off on the subject of the atomic bomb requires that you focus your attention properly. Keep your eyes where they belong, on the ball, because it serves to lead us into a minute universe containing things so infinitesimal they are hard to imagine, unless we change our concepts of size and space. And the change comes easier by taking a quick glimpse of golf, a game involving the manipulation of a small sphere, the ball, on the surface of another sphere about 300 million times as large, the Earth. For a golf ball is about 300 million times as large as each of the atoms which make up its elements. If an atom is so small, how can we know anything about it? By observing its effects. You can't see the wind either, but you can see what it does. And you know from recent history what the atom can do. It's a mighty might, yet it becomes immense when we look inside it and compare the whole to its parts. This, an atom of hydrogen, which is one of the principal elements found in a golf ball, is the simplest of all atoms. It consists of a negatively charged light particle called an electron, which revolves in an orbit about a nucleus. The nucleus of a hydrogen atom is made up of a single particle with a positive electrical charge and is known as a proton. To re-emphasize the submicroscopic nature of our subject, if we could increase the size of the nucleus proton to that of a golf ball, the route of the electron would be about a mile away. Hydrogen is one of the most common elements found in nature. As a gas, it has many uses. One of them is fuel or welders' torches. Scientists have classified and arranged elements according to their atomic structure, and hydrogen, with its single proton, gets first billing. It is assigned the atomic number 1, which refers to the proton. The ability of an element's atoms to form chemical compounds, as hydrogen combined with oxygen to form water, is governed by the atom's electrons. In the free natural state, the number of electrons and protons is the same, and the additional uncharged nuclear particle does not affect chemical behavior. We can view it as supercargo, dead weight, the passenger going along just for the ride. It is called a neutron. It gives this form of hydrogen an atomic weight of 2, the sum of the protons and neutrons in the nucleus. Different forms of the same element, with different weights but carrying the same electrical charges and having identical chemical behavior, are known as isotopes. For example, adding this neutron to a standard atom of hydrogen would produce this isotope of hydrogen known as deuterium. This is the hydrogen in heavy water. Adding another neutron produces a third hydrogen isotope called tritium. One rung above hydrogen on the ladder of elements is helium. One of the uses for helium you're probably familiar with is in lighter-than-air craft. A helium atom has 2 electrons and a nucleus composed of 2 protons plus 2 neutrons. So helium has the atomic number 2, same as the protons which it possesses, and an atomic weight of 4, its protons plus neutrons. Going up the ladder, we find elements with atoms that become progressively complicated, with more electrons and increased numbers of protons and neutrons in their nuclei. For example, a neutral carbon atom with an atomic number of 6 has 6 electrons. In the nucleus are 6 protons plus 6 neutrons, so the atomic weight is 12. Carbon exists in many forms, high and humble, as diamonds and pencil points. At the top of nature's ladder is the most complex atom, uranium, with an atomic number of 92. Naturally occurring uranium has 3 isotopic forms, with atomic weights of 234, 235, and 238. Uranium and its neighboring elements are maladjusted. Their atoms have an unstable number of protons and neutrons. So, observing nature's law against lack of balance and symmetry, they try to become stable by getting rid of their excess nuclear freight. The manifestation of this inner struggle is known as radioactivity. The adjustment may release energy in three ways. Beta particles bearing a negative charge are expelled from the nucleus. They are essentially high-speed electrons. Alpha particles may also be shot out. They consist of 2 protons plus 2 neutrons and are positively charged. They are the same as the nucleus of the helium atom. Or the energy may be in the form of gamma rays, electromagnetic radiations like X-rays. Natural radioactivity causes these heavy, unstable elements to decay progressively down the ladder, eventually reaching a stable form of lead. The unit for measuring the rate of such changes or transmutations is the half-life, the time required for 50% of a radioactive material to decay. To illustrate, suppose you had a gallon of whiskey, and each day you drank half the amount in the bottle. The first day you drank half a gallon, and the whiskey's half-life would be 1 day. The second day, assuming for the sake of science you'd be able to sit up and take it, you'd knock off 50% of the remainder, or 1 quart. The third day a pint, and so on. But you'd never quite get to the bottom of the bottle. There'd always be a half remaining. The fact that some radioactive matter always remains is not so important as the time required for the half to decay. Half-life varies from isotope to isotope. It takes 4,500,000,000 years for half a hunk of uranium-238 to become thorium-234. The half-life of radium-226 is 1,600 years. That of radon is slightly less than 4 days, while others have half-lives of fractions of a second. So far, we've been watching natural radioactivity. Man has stepped into the act, however, and in some cases outdone nature. Using as his guns cyclotrons and other accelerators, and employing hydrogen and helium nuclei, neutrons, protons, electrons, and other minute bullets, he has made stable matter unstable, produced radioactive isotopes of many elements. He transmutes lithium into helium with a hydrogen nucleus as the projectile. By striking the nucleus of a chromium atom with a helium nucleus, he changes it into radioactive manganese with the emission of a proton. Manganese in turn decays to iron with the emission of a beta particle and gamma ray. And scientists have gone up the ladder above uranium, creating new elements by hitting the nucleus with a neutron. If the neutron sticks, the atomic weight goes to 239, a new artificial uranium isotope. But the nucleus reacts by getting rid of a negatively charged beta particle, thus raising the positive charge of the nucleus by 1 and becoming a new element with the atomic number 93 and called neptunium. Neptunium is a malcontent, and it in turn emits a beta particle turning into element 94, plutonium. Even heavier elements have been developed, but we can stop with plutonium because it's one of the basic ingredients of an atomic explosion. In trying to bring about such an explosion, scientists had 2 recipes, 2 blueprints to follow. The first called for nuclear fusion. To illustrate, here are 4 hydrogen atoms. If fused, brought together under proper conditions, they form 1 helium atom. But a loss of weight occurs during the process. In other words, the parts are heavier than the whole. Why? Because when the fusion takes place, this extra mass or weight is converted to and released as energy. Energy which might be put to some use. The sun has the key to this combination. It is continually converting hydrogen into helium and sending the resulting energy earthward. That's the principle which might make a hydrogen bomb work. But to the scientists who wanted a quick solution, releasing a piece of the sun on Earth for a moment of devastation seemed a bit impractical. So they went to the upper end of the ladder and set about getting atomic power through the reverse of fusion by breaking heavy elements into lighter ones by a process called fission. Like this. When hit by a neutron traveling at a certain speed, the nucleus of a uranium-235 atom breaks up into two much lighter elements, with a tremendous release of energy from that which held the tightly packed nucleus together, like this. While it seems inconsistent that both building up and breaking down of atoms releases energy, this is only possible at the far ends of our ladder of elements, where fusion produces energy through the combination of the lightest elements and fission splits only the heaviest. The products of fission and fusion tend toward the middle of the ladder. In the case of fission, the possibilities seem immense and workable. The scientists knew that the fission of 1 pound of uranium would produce as much energy as the combustion of 1,400 tons of coal, or 250,000 gallons of gasoline. The question was how to do it. How to produce the breaking up of the millions of atoms in a comparatively massive hunk of uranium and do it instantaneously, so that instead of a gradual release of smooth power as demonstrated by a moving locomotive, the energy would be built up, then let loose in a violent explosion. A path was indicated by the fact that fission of a uranium-235 nucleus by one neutron creates, in addition to the fission products and energy, 2 or 3 new neutrons. Perhaps these neutrons could be put to work in developing a chain reaction. This is an example of a chain reaction sustaining itself. This is one that builds up to a big finish. If several neutrons could be produced in a single fission of a uranium atom, and these neutrons in turn could be used for further fissions, then a chain reaction would be developed, which would reach a colossal climax. The energy liberated by each fission step would be let loose in a mighty explosion. They knew that uranium-235 was good fissionable material. They also knew it was scarce. 1 part in 140 of natural uranium is 235. An insignificant amount is 234, and the rest is 238, which wasn't a suitable ingredient. It was hard to extract the good from the bad because, being isotopes, both had the same atomic number of 92, therefore the same chemical behavior. The very slight difference in atomic weights, however, made possible several ways of achieving the separation by physical means. If natural uranium gas is passed along one side of a porous barrier with a greater vacuum on the other, the lighter 235 atoms will go through the barrier a bit faster than the 238. By this process, it is possible to enrich the uranium with the 235 isotope, enrich it enough for fission purposes. The Manhattan Engineer District team of scientists, engineers, industrialists, labor, and military built huge plants to produce the stuff by this and other means. The scientists went further, taking advantage of the fact that uranium-238, instead of fissioning, tends to capture neutrons to ultimately become plutonium. And plutonium is as effective for fissioning as uranium-235. The Manhattan Engineer District team built a plutonium plant at Hanford, Washington. Our bomb builders were nearing the goal. They had the substance. Now for the shape. This isn't it. And the reasons become obvious when we hit the block with a neutron and follow the careers of the 3 neutrons we assume are formed by the initial atom split. This neutron enters a nucleus without causing fission. It's captured. It's a dud. These 2 escape. This is then a hunk of fissionable material in which the neutrons accomplish nothing, and in which a chain reaction can't even get started. It's called a subcritical mass. The problem of the scientists became clear: to make fullest use of all neutrons produced in a single fission. A big step toward their goal was to prevent the escape of the neutrons. Here, one of 3 neutrons makes good, fissioning another atom and starting a chain. Our material is now called a critical mass. This would be fine for an atomic power plant, but it isn't enough for an explosion. To get that, we must keep the birth rate of the neutrons well above the death rate. 1 neutron must produce 2, 2 must produce 4, and so on. Then we'll be in business. One way to cut down neutron loss and increase the number of fissions is to give them more working room. Yet, since we are dealing with bomb material, we must economize on size. So the best shape is a sphere, which has minimum surface area through which neutrons can escape, with maximum volume in which they can work. And we can further decrease neutron loss by covering our bomb with a special mirror, which will reflect the neutrons, turn them back into the field of play. When we get a successful chain reaction growing, we have what is called a supercritical mass. And our situation is also supercritical, because we aren't ready for an explosion. We must keep our supercritical mass divided into subcritical parts until the proper time. When the explosion is desired, the parts are brought together quickly and kept together long enough for a great number of fissions to occur. The time for our bomb to explode is less than 1/1,000,000th of a second. In building our bomb, we've been playing a game, toying in a broad general way with theories already worked out in detail and executed by those who during World War II developed and produced the most destructive weapons of all time. Theirs was a dramatic role and a precarious position. They couldn't experiment realistically along the way. They couldn't conduct small, safe, pint-sized tests. There's no such thing as a small, safe atomic explosion. Below critical size, the bomb is a bust. Above, it's a burst. Compromise wasn't possible. To those who early on the morning of July 16, 1945, awaited the setting off of their first atomic bomb, it had to be all or nothing. But which? The answer left no doubts.